Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your master of fun and wonder, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett with Tallulah. Tallulah is the first time. She wasn't back yesterday, but she's back now. I wonder where Gilbert is. And you know what that means, everyone. It wouldn't be a Robservations show if Tallulah was not barking for cookies as soon as I went on. You got to give it up to her. She's pretty smart. Okay, Tallulah, there you go. One for you. Here's Gilbert. There's one for Gilbert. And you only get two today. Only two. Gilbert? All right. Good girl. All right, well, here we are. Once again, it is Robservations, episode number 330. I am Rob casting at you from the Robservatory. I know. Come on, that's part of the fun of the show. So, Lily, you have to stop now. You have to stop. Oh, listen to her growl. Listen to her growl. It's going to be an interesting show today. So, first thing I want to do. Robservations is, of course, the show about something. The first thing that I wanted to discuss is, of course, boy, I get a lot of pushback on my opinions about Star Trek Picard, Star Trek Discovery. And I was in sort of an interesting Twitter conversation today. It's very interesting because a lot of people that talk to me about Star Trek on social media do so from what I would like to say or like to think of as, well, they always take what they would consider, I think, to be the high ground. And there's a guy named the Trek-splainer. Because, if you're not mansplaining to somebody should be Trek-splaining to you, right? And it was interesting because I got in this conversation with him about one of the things that I don't like about modern Star Trek. And this is true of all modern Star Trek. But one of the things that I was, and I object to this on about many different modern science fiction things that we see in media. And it really comes down to the fact that it concerns me as someone who loves science fiction literature. Science fiction literature is full of compelling ideas, and that's what makes it so much fun to read. And a lot of the most compelling ideas that you read in science fiction are how technology... Oh, now you're going to bark at me too, Gilbert? No. I mean, I know. I haven't been here, and this is the first time the dogs have been on the show since I've been back in Los Angeles. But you have to not bark on the show. But one of the things that I've always found really interesting, it's going to be one of those days, isn't it? One of those days. Tallulah, you have to stop. Let's see. I can just whisper. Maybe I'll just do a whole episode. It'll be an ASMR video. But anyway, so what I was thinking about modern science fiction, one of the things that attracts me to it is how all of the great science fiction writers extrapolate upon current technology. And when I say current technology, I'm not just talking about video phones. I'm talking about all kinds of technology. Technology that we haven't even perhaps thought of yet, but that could be extrapolated out of, say, medical technology or deep learning AIs or something like that. I find that to be one of the most interesting things about science fiction. And one of the things that irks me, maybe it's a personal peccadillo of mine, I don't know, is when I see science fiction not utilizing the technology from its own universe in a way that I think would be interesting and innovative. And one of the things that I was thinking about, and I articulated it on Twitter today, is in Star Trek Picard. And that is the use of transporter technology. We have seen that they have transporters. Apparently, you can just walk from place to place on the planet. Now, that is a really interesting extrapolation of transporter technology that makes sense to me. Also, we've seen an interesting use of transporter technology in the Starfleet archives, where things are apparently held in some kind of transport stasis in a pattern buffer until they're needed, whether it's a painting or whatever artifact from the Picard library you want to look at. Now, that to me is exactly what I'm talking about. That is an interesting extrapolation of the technology that we've seen that we associate with Star Trek. One of the things I love about the very best of the Star Trek novelists, whether it's modern novelists like David Mack or Christopher Bennett or Dayton Ward or other older novelists, and I mean novelists, say, from the 80s that I fell in love with, whether it was Diane Duane or the Reeve Stevens or Peter David, is they would extrapolate on this technology that we've seen in the show itself and put it to interesting use. And it would make sense. And you're like, well, that feels right. That makes sense to me. And it also is creative. Well, one of the things that has really bothered me about the plot of Picard is this entire idea of this rescue armada, right? Now, if you need to evacuate en masse a population, and we've heard that it was 900 million people that need to be evacuated from the Romulan homeworld or the Romulan system, what would be the fastest, easiest way to do that? Well, they talk about how they needed a bunch of ships to do it. And they were building this armada at the Utopia Planitia shipyards. Well, as far as Star Trek is concerned, that seems pretty silly to me, because what I would think that they would do if you have to move a population off a planet very quickly is to use the transporter in a novel way. Now, we have seen in Star Trek history, in the third season original series episode Day of the Dove, when the Enterprise arrived on a planet, they find a damaged Klingon D7 battlecruiser and Klingons. When they were all beaming up, Kirk was able to contact Scotty, and they were able to hold the Klingons in transporter stasis while they got off the transporter pad. They can call in security, and then they materialized the Klingons on board the Enterprise. Well, we also saw in the 6th season Next Generation episode, I think it was 6th season, Relics, where Mr. Scott used his ship, the Jenolan, crashed on the surface of a Dyson sphere, and he had no way to get resupplied. He would run out of food. He figured out a novel way to save his own life, where he put himself in a pattern buffer. He beamed himself onto the self-beaming into a pattern buffer, where he remained for decades until he was rescued by the Enterprise D. So if I was in charge of writing a Star Trek show and there was going to be a armada, or we had to rescue a planetary population relatively quickly, the first thing that I would have thought of, and I'm not saying this is necessarily the right idea, but it certainly would work within the Star Trek universe, which is you use transporter technology. You would build ships, maybe overpowered, like perhaps instead of a generational ship, a couple of gigantic ships that have maybe nothing but propulsion and computers systems, where they could store the pattern buffer in a giant pattern buffer where you could beam up instead of, I mean, we know they have cargo transporters, and they have rescue ships that have larger transporters. You have ships that you could transport maybe 1,000 people or 10,000 people all at one time and then move them off the planet. That would have been something that I would have thought would have been an interesting way to go. Now, that doesn't fit in with the story they're telling. They want to have the Utopia Planitia shipyards destroyed. They want to have Picard leave Starfleet because, well, after this rescue armada, which also makes no sense to me at all, that the Romulan Star Empire that predates the Federation by hundreds, if not thousands of years, they couldn't rescue their own people? But I would have thought that transporter technology would be the way to move a planetary population off a planet very quickly and relocate them into a safe area fast. Now, for me, that's what I love about science fiction. When they've already established it would be an interesting use of the transporter that we haven't ever heard of before. But one of my problems with a lot of modern Star Trek since 2009, is there's no creative use. Like putting the Enterprise underwater in Star Trek Into Darkness makes no sense to me. Building starships on the ground makes no sense to me. I don't believe it. I don't believe you would ever build a ship that is that has the structure of a heavy cruiser Constitution class ship like the Enterprise. It's not built to have to lift off from a planet. It wouldn't work. I know people say, well, we saw it work in the gravity well. Tomorrow was yesterday and all that. But the Enterprise was built in outer space. The components might have been built on Earth, but they were then either rocketed aloft, transported aloft, however they were sent aloft, and then the components were built in space. And we've seen that all the way back to Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which was the first time that we ever saw a ship in orbit in a space dock, and it was really cool. And it's really neat, and it's a visual cue that immediately establishes how advanced technology is, and building ships in space seems it seems like that would be the thing to do in the Star Trek universe. And when they put the Enterprise on the Earth, so you can end up with one shot of our rebel Kirk, our rebel without a cause, Top Gun Maverick Kirk, rolling up to see the Enterprise being constructed, and therein is his future. It seemed very retro to me. You know, it in a way, it sort of demystifies the Star Trek universe and literally brings it down to Earth, which is not really what Star Trek was about. And that's the kind of thing that I think that I object to with modern Star Trek. Rather than come up with a really interesting, unique, in-universe solution, they have this idea that you're building an armada of ships, which is a very 20th century way to think, or now 21st century way to think. And it's that kind of thinking that really bothers me. I'm like, look, I expect my science fiction to be far more creative than that. And when they're going to show you, oh, we're going to literally have to build a bunch of ships to ferry people off. They're still going to use transporter technology, but wouldn't it be interesting? You'd still need ships, but you wouldn't need, I don't know, an armada of however many ships they said they were building. All you'd have to build is 2 or 3 giant space-faring vessels with enough transporter technology and enough pattern buffers, I guess, and judging by the way Star Trek technology works, that's not out of the realm of possibility. And I feel that all of modern Star Trek suffers from this, because the extrapolation of current technology, and even the extrapolation of Star Trek technology, even, you know, going from a flip communicator to the comm badges of Next Generation, that was a I thought a very valid advance in technology. And I really enjoyed that. And with the modern take on Star Trek, I feel that so much of the thinking of these shows is mired in the 20th and 21st century. Just like in Star Trek 09, how did we show a rebellious child? Well, he literally steals a car. He literally steals a car in a Star Trek movie. I want to know, in Star Trek 09, what is the 23rd century equivalent of stealing a car? So much of Star Trek 09 and what J.J. Abrams was doing was this retro look at a human future where it was very 20th century. And it was irksome to me as somebody who always saw Star Trek being representative of a potential future. And sure, is there a lot of goofy stuff in Star Trek? Indeed. But, you know, they figured from a production standpoint, we can't use a shuttlecraft every day, so we have to come up with an interesting, unique way to get our cast from one set down to another without using, say, model work. We had one visual effect, and they came up with a very elegant solution, which was the transporter. And then, of course, in Star Trek 09, they both subvert the idea by having people can I guess they have, whether it's intra-ship beaming, they really did it Into Darkness. But even in Star Trek 09, when you beam off Delta Vega onto the Enterprise, a ship traveling at warp, it's like, well, you violated all the rules we ever knew of the transporter, which means the transporter is meaningless. And then if you can beam that far, I guess starships are meaningless too. So it's just one of the many things that has been irksome to me about modern technology. If you have a ship that travels on the mycellular network and can go anywhere in the universe, why don't you pull that off the front lines and, I don't know, go somewhere, explore, who knows? But none of that stuff, it's either the technology is magical and doesn't make any sense, or that the technology that we've had that's part of the Star Trek universe, it's never used in a way that seems realistic. It's no longer confined by its own rules, which means it's all magical gobbledygook anyway, and you've undermined the entire universe that people have loved for 50 years. But that's one of the things that is irksome to me, and that has nothing to do with story. It has nothing to do with character. But what it does have to do with is writing effective science fiction. Because when you read all the great science fiction, Dune is a perfect example. All of the different technology, the whole idea of the Landsrad, the system of government and how it all works, and the Padishah emperors, and I mean, it's all of that's really interesting. And yes, it extrapolates from the modern day, but it takes things that we already have here, including our earth religions, and does something really interesting with them. It shows that what you have is an imaginative writer who's doing the kind of research that you expect. And when you're a science fiction fan, you are predisposed to enjoying those kinds of flourishes. That's one of the attractions of the genre. And they actually went so far as to have Picard be dismissive of science fiction as a genre. Now, when I'm watching this, I just, and of course, what is it? It's Isaac Asimov's, his robotics books. I mean, I don't know how many were in this anthology. Was it just I, Robot, or was it the Elijah Bailey novels? I mean, what was it? I don't know. But it just seemed like, okay, there's a healthy disdain. And as somebody will point out, Michael Chabon and, of course, Kirsten Beyer, you have actual writers of science fiction, although Michael Chabon's science fiction is, it is legit. I have it right up here. But I just think that it's amazing to me that we don't have more literary devices, because I think that the Akiva Goldsman and Alex Kurtzman of it all probably supersedes all of that, because Alex, as I talked about yesterday, Akiva Goldsman has a history with Isaac Asimov. It was probably his idea to actually have Picard say that. But I'm like, what does that mean? Are you're trashing your own genre? You're having your protagonist literally break the fourth wall and say, "I've never cared for science fiction." And of course, it's Isaac Asimov, his robotic works, because it's so on the nose. You have to go to that. I mean, could there be a more on the nose piece of science fiction than Isaac Asimov's robot works? I mean, the whole idea of the three laws of robotics came from Asimov. So, okay, let's show that. I mean, it really? Anyway, that's not what I want to talk about today. So, actually, there's something cool that I'll you know what? Let's look at something first. Something exciting that dropped today on Dig, which is pretty astonishing. And I want to check it out and show it to you. Here's an article today from Dig. Someone used neural networks to upscale an 1895 film to 4K, 60 frames per second, and the result is really quite astounding. The Lumiere brothers, 1895 short, Arrival of a Train at I think it's Sotat? I don't speak French. Elizabeth isn't here. She can't tell me how to say it right. It's one of the most famous film clips in history. It is. You see it in rudimentary or freshman film classes. You've almost certainly seen the 50-second movie at some point in your life, but just to refresh your memory, here's the clip again. The clip is actually of a train. Actually, you know what? I didn't mean to do that, but I can play it, and you can kind of see it. But let's just jump ahead. It basically shows a train arriving at a station, and it's one of the first films that showed something like this. Now, put your mind back in the day and think to yourself that no one had ever seen a movie of a train arriving at a station. But anyway, you get the idea. But it's a film clip that was astonishing for the time because there were no movies. So you had zoetropes and things like that, but nobody had ever done something like this before. So a dude used modern technology and upscaled this. I mean, look at the difference. I don't know how well it shows up in a small frame, and he added sound and everything. Deep learning AI could extrapolate where things were supposed to be. I mean, stunning. Although I have to say, it looks like video, but okay. But still, what's amazing to me about this, the first thing I thought about was Deep Space Nine, and it's this YouTuber, Dennis Shiriev, wanted to update the look of the clip, so with the help of several neural networks, he upscaled the clip to 4K resolution and 60 frames per second. The result is something else, and it is incredible. I mean, I watched this today, and I'm like, oh my God, because I famously went on record and said, hang on, I'm gonna put this clip into the live chat, so you can go to it right now and look at it. So there it is in the live chat. It astonished me. I mean, I looked at this and I was thinking to myself, my God, if they can do that, imagine, look, will it replace going back to the original negative? I don't think so. If you can go back to the original negative and perhaps use neural networks to enhance that negative even further, that could be quite amazing. I mean, I don't quite know. I mean, I'd still want to go back to the original negative because the original negative obviously has more of the original information, and I could only imagine that using this technology, having more original information would be better. But still, this is, one of the things I also think is monumentally stupid about Picard is this idea that, they don't use AI, they don't use cybernetics, artificial life forms. I mean, they're saying that. And which, again, from a science fiction perspective, makes no sense. Any spacefaring, technologically advanced civilization would use AI, if nothing else, for stellar navigation. I mean, so talking about how, well, the Romulans don't use this technology. They only use computers to crunch numbers. Well, as we all know, that's just silly. But one of the great things about modern technologies is how it can enhance images. Now, anytime when you watch a science fiction movie where they can enhance images times, thousands of percentage points, so you can see into the nooks and crannies, like Rick Deckard looking through pictures, Leon's pictures, or something like that, it becomes more and more believable when you, in fact, have this kind of technology. And it's only in its infancy. But I've often talked about how we're not going to see Voyager or Deep Space Nine in high definition anytime soon, unless you go back. It took 4 years to transfer, and a team of people, like 30 people, working full 5-hour or 5-day work weeks to get that transferred. So, hey. Anyway, thought it was really cool. Wanted to share it with you. So I would suggest everyone go check it out because it's amazing. Now, on the John Campea show this morning, I was talking about the upcoming Kenobi series. Now, as many of you know, probably somebody should put a timestamp down, which I never do. I'm bad at that. But at 1:23 and however many seconds, I'm talking about Kenobi. So I have heard a number of things from various people about the upcoming Kenobi streaming show on Disney+. Now, as many people know, and as we've heard Ewan McGregor say on numerous occasions, he had to keep, before it was out that he was actually going to do this, he had to keep the secret for 3 years that Kenobi was happening. And he knew it was happening. Well, as everyone knows from the Duel of the Fates script that I sold, yeah, these dogs are very excited to be back here. Tallulah, you can't. Here, I'm going to give you a cookie so she'll shut up. And people are like, oh, you're training her to do that. Well, yes, but really what it is she knows that she's hearing my voice. But so from the Duel of the Fates script I shared, there's a lot more production artwork that I can't share with you that was done for that script. It was deep, deep, deep into pre-production. Now, so is the Kenobi movie. Until Solo sort of derailed the plans for the Star Wars story movies, they had a number of Star Wars story films in production, or in various stages of development. I shouldn't say production. They had the Boba Fett film, they had, of course, Rogue One, and they had this Kenobi film. Now, the Kenobi film made a lot of sense, especially because you have Ewan McGregor, and he would come back, and everybody, even the people that are detractors from the prequel trilogy, nobody, I think, was ever unhappy with Ewan McGregor's portrayal of Obi Wan Kenobi. It was apparent from the opening scene of The Phantom Menace he was the perfect choice to play a young Kenobi. So, and the idea that after Revenge of the Sith, Kenobi, who knows what happened to him from the time that Order 66 was given to the time he fought Anakin Skywalker to the high ground, and he wound up putting the twins in getting them out of harm's way. What did he do before he was there in the jungling wastes of Tatooine, overseeing and making sure that Luke grew up to perhaps be part of the hope of the galaxy? So, making a Kenobi movie felt right because you have an actor who can play Kenobi, who has already played Kenobi longer than anyone else, and it made sense. It made sense. So there had to have been, knowing how these movies are made, there had to have been a lot of work done on the Kenobi feature. Now, as we know, Deborah Chow, who did 2 excellent episodes of The Mandalorian, she's a female director. Kathleen Kennedy was recently discussing how you're going to see female directors in the Star Wars universe directing a Star Wars feature film, and she also pointed out, rightfully so, about Deborah Chow helming Kenobi. This was on the red carpet at the BAFTAs. It was Sunday night. Well, they pulled the plug on the Kenobi series. They pulled the plug. The Kenobi series already had people working. Employees were sent home. Somebody very close to even this podcast informed us of that. And they would know. I mean, they were working. They were making things. The Kenobi series was moving forward. It was not in development anymore. It was an active pre-production. Now, the word on the street is, the one that has been reported, I guess, on the trades, is that they wanted to retool the scripts. Ewan McGregor, even 2 days ago, was on, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel. As a matter of fact, let's take a gander and let me read this article. And this came from Cinema Blend. And the article is Baby Kenobi. Ewan McGregor watched The Mandalorian as prep for his own Star Wars series. This is by Britt Lawrence. It was on February 1st. Already know and love Baby Yoda? Is there room in your heart for Baby Kenobi? Jimmy Fallon was just joking, so it's not happening. But what a mental image. What is taking place is Ewan McGregor watching Disney Plus's The Mandalorian to prep for his own Star Wars series. Ewan McGregor's Obi Wan TV show is coming to Disney Plus, and McGregor is doing his homework. What better show to get ready with than The Mandalorian? Exactly. McGregor was a guest on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon when he shared an update on how his Disney Plus series is coming along, telling Fallon, "We're going to start shooting it next year. I've been watching The Mandalorian, and I really liked it. And I'm just trying to keep abreast of all the new Star Wars films that come out. And I'm excited about it. It's been a long time. I can't remember when the last one I did. 2003, I think, was the last one I did." Now, call me crazy, but let's read that quote again. "We're going to start shooting it next year. I've been watching The Mandalorian, and I liked it. I really liked it. And I'm just trying to keep abreast of all the new Star Wars films that come out. And I'm excited about it. It's been a long time. I can't remember when the last one I did. 2003, I think, was the last one. That's when they would have shot Revenge of the Sith, so he's not incorrect. Imagine that, watching The Mandalorian as part of prepping for your next job, and how much fun that would be. Ewan McGregor is doing it to connect with what is going on in the Star Wars franchise. As he indicated to Jimmy Fallon, it's been a long time since McGregor starred in a Star Wars film. Ewan McGregor mentions it being 2003. However, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, actually came out in 2005, which currently makes it 15 years since... Yes, but he had to start shooting it in 2003. McGregor was only 2 years off, though. He wasn't 2 years off because he started shooting it in 2003. The movie came out in 2005. McGregor was only 2 years off, though, and maybe he was including filming time. In some related good news, McGregor is still saying that his Obi Wan Kenobi Disney series is set to start filming in 2021. He did not say that, or maybe he did. The beginning date that he recently shared following news of the TV show getting delayed. The update also came after a false rumor began circulating about the show getting canceled. It goes on and on and on. "Well, you saw The Irishman. They can de-age me down to a baby size. Little beard, little lightsaber." Anyway, it goes on. According to what Ewan McGregor previously revealed, the television series will pick up with Obi Wan Kenobi in between Episode 3 and Episode 4. Fans pleased with The Mandalorian will have that to enjoy. In the meantime, a second season is on the way. You can follow Ewan McGregor's path and check out the first season of The Mandalorian, which is now streaming on Disney+. Blah, 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 blah. I just thought that McGregor's words were interesting. Now, knowing how all of these things work, I am willing, and I have no insider information like this. I can say that I certainly got the information, and I was given access to production artwork and the script for Duel of the Fates from, let's just say, a very highly placed industry source. This industry source, and no one I know working, has confirmed this to me. So I want to be very, very clear. This is 100% speculation on my part based on working 30 years in the entertainment business, beginning my illustrious career after I was an art department production assistant on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, working at Warner Brothers in feature production for 2 years. So I worked in feature production at Warner Brothers for Bill Young, the senior vice president of physical production of the studio. I think that the reason that the Kenobi series has been pulled, they talked about they're retooling the scripts. I think that's what they're doing. I think that if you look at Star Wars, whatever Star Wars movie is in active development, whether Kevin Feige has one, whether Rian Johnson's ever going to do his trilogy, whoever is making a new Star Wars movie, if they wanted to get one out by 2022, that's a tall order, starting from scratch. But what if you had a film that had already been developed? You had a film that was already, for all intents and purposes, ready to go. They have that. They had that in Kenobi. They have their star, who is a movie star. They have a character that is beloved. It's not like, it's very different from Solo. I think one of the biggest mistakes that, perhaps the biggest mistake Kathleen Kennedy made was not making Kenobi first. I understand Solo was a marquee character. Rogue One, they introduced a bunch of new characters, but the situation was one of the most familiar in Star Trek lore. So that made sense. But I think the biggest misstep was to not give us a Kenobi movie first, because you needed distance from the last time we saw Harrison Ford as Han Solo to give us a new Han Solo movie with an actor playing Han Solo that isn't Han Solo. So I think that they looked at these scripts and they thought to themselves, I've heard they were going to do 6 episodes or they were going to do 8 episodes. I mean, think about it. 6 episodes of a Kenobi series, if each episode was, say, Mandalorian style and a half an hour long, you'd be looking at 3 hours. Well, if you have a 2.5-hour movie, not too far away, and a Kenobi film is going to wind up on Disney Plus anyway, but what if you could make $1 billion theatrically before the movie goes to Disney Plus? It makes sense. It makes perfect sense that if they're going to do Kenobi, they probably had to then decide, decided, hey, it's while The Mandalorian was great, we proved that it could work. We used this new stagecraft technology, which they're probably going to employ to make a feature, which also might mean why they pulled people out of, say, the UK to make this movie, because with stagecraft technology, you don't necessarily need to. Maybe you could make it Mandalorian style and keep the costs down. I don't know. But I think that, and again, I am speculating, but it makes sense that they're going to make Kenobi a Star Wars story. They're going to go back to the original plan, whatever that is, and the script that had been opened up into whether it was 6 episodes or 8 episodes, they're gonna pare it down and they're gonna make it and they're gonna turn it back into the feature film, because all of the development work for that movie was already completed. And it's a film that people want. Everybody loves Ewan McGregor as Obi Wan Kenobi. He's playing a character that we would love to see again. And his story has been, or what happened to him. Heck, I've got my Mythos Obi Wan Kenobi figure that Sideshow put out. I think that it's a great idea, and it makes sense from a production standpoint. I mean, if you could make a movie, there's all this Star Wars technology lying around, The Mandalorian, Rise of Skywalker, all of this stuff. They just keep making more and more stuff that they can use in all of these productions. They're just creating, every time they do new Star Wars, they have more assets, more digital assets, more set extensions, all kinds of things that they can repurpose and amortize, and it's going to get cheaper and cheaper to make Star Wars movies, especially using the new stagecraft technology that they are pioneering with The Mandalorian. So to me, it just makes sense. They're not only going to make Kenobi and it's going to be on Disney Plus, but they're going to release it in the theater first. And I think from a business standpoint, it makes sense. If this show is as good as they think it's going to be, or if the movie can be as good and as satisfying, and why shouldn't it be? It's not something they've thrown into production. It's something that was developed over years of time. And I'm sure that they took a lot of ideas. You get all the art of the Star Wars art of books. You look through them. I used to have them sitting right behind me, but I move things around. That it's already there. So again, speculating, I think it makes sense that if they want a Star Wars movie in theaters by 2022, you're going to see Deborah Chow as the first female director of a Star Wars movie, and that movie is going to be Kenobi. And they're going to repurpose what they were going to do first as a movie, then as a series. Now they're going to go back, because whatever you thought of Rise of Skywalker, it still grossed over $1 billion at the worldwide box office, and that's a pretty good number. You know what would have happened if they had just dropped The Rise of Skywalker on Disney Plus? Well, the same thing that would happen with anything that goes on Disney Plus. It would have not have gone theatrical and made $1 billion. So if you're making Kenobi, it's still going to wind up on Disney Plus, but if it's as good as they probably think it is, that's why they're retooling it. And they're gonna make it differently probably. That's why they sent everyone home. They need to retool the script and turn it back into a feature script, because I'll bet you the script was never entirely refined. Maybe it was. I don't know. But either way, I believe that we'll have an announcement, I guess fairly shortly, that the Kenobi series is now going to be a movie, and it's going to be coming out in 2022. I could be totally wrong. And, I have no knowledge. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. They're making a show. That's the obvious answer is Occam's razor is yes, they're still making a Kenobi show. But you know what? $1 billion. Are you going to leave $1 billion on the table? The only new Star Wars movie that didn't make $1 billion is Solo, and that's because you didn't have Harrison Ford playing Han Solo. But in this, you have Ewan McGregor playing Obi Wan Kenobi. One of the best things about the prequel trilogy. Who wouldn't go see that? I think any Star Wars fan would go see it. And I think what's really interesting is as an adjunct to the Mandalorian show, you're going to have a lot of probably the same crew, a lot of the same people. I'm sure that Favreau is consulting in some way on this. And I think it's pretty exciting. Anyway, that's kind of what that's my topic for today. I don't know if I'm correct, but it does seem at least that it's definitely a possibility. Again, I could be wrong. I have no real information, but then again, hey, time will tell, won't it? We'll see. Willow Yang sent in a tip. Movie Pop and I were discussing this yesterday. Is there any reason why you picked increments of 3.33, 4.2, 6.9, and 1337 for your tips? 4.2, I assume, refers to the answer to life, the universe, and everything. And 69 is everyone's favorite number. I don't know if it's everyone's favorite number, but it's a pretty good position, if you know what I'm saying. I like the view. Isn't it? Davey504 loves, one of my favorite YouTubers loves 69. No, to be honest, that was just what Stream Elements had put on there when I set up that. You can tip, if you want to tip the channel, and by the way, Tips are always appreciated. And if you want to interact live, either tips or super chats are the way to do that. Maybe I should go switch to numbers. You just gave me a great idea. Willow, you always give me great ideas. I would just, by the way, did you tell your mother I wished her happy birthday on the show? I should change that. Those are just the numbers that were there when I went. They're kind of silly. I admittedly, they are silly. Richard Ford sent in a super chat. Welcome back from your travels, Rob. Thank you, Richard. I was in New York doing the Schmodown thing, doing some work on Tango Shalom, and I am back, and I am happy to be back. I like getting up in the morning early, having a nice cup of coffee with Elizabeth as she goes off to Arts Center. I mean, she's got like 10 hours of classes today. It's crazy. And then I could do my 2 shows, and I've got so much work to do. I just slammed with all kinds of work, but that's all good. Richard Ford also sent in a super chat and said, hello, yes, why not evacuate the planet by transporters since we're in the JJ-verse? Why an armada? Just build more intergalactic transporter pads. Yes, sir. I mean, or, you create you use technology and you build these new things. And it just, I understand they have to have the Utopia Planitia shipyards blown up and all that, but that doesn't, it isn't, it's such 20th century thinking, and it's not cool Star Trek thinking. If the Reeve Stevens or Christopher L. Bennett or David Mack wrote a book about how they're going to evacuate a planet en masse in the Star Trek universe, they probably would be the first people to say, well, we'll build large transporter ships that are built for this very purpose. As a matter of fact, wouldn't they already have? I mean, I'm sure that Romulus wasn't the only planet. We saw other planets, Sarpedon, for instance, in the penultimate episode of the original series. All are yesterdays. What did they do? They sent everybody into the past because nobody knew their planet. They didn't have spacefaring technology. But I'm sure that there are other planets in the Star Trek universe we just haven't seen that were threatened by supernovas, and transporter technology would be easy to get people off. But if even the idea that your sun is just going to go kerflooey so quickly that you can't evacuate your planetary population, even that idea is dumb. But anyway, Stub McShave says, you had the butt dick rocking piece in the last 2 Campy episodes. Have you changed your idea of having it present at the John Campy show, or was it something you missed? It's something I missed. I never wanted John to get in trouble for that. Just wanted to say, Stubble, that was Herman Mechanic's rocking machine that Kubrick used in A Clockwork Orange. I actually have a 1-to-1. I have a giant one right over there. When I move, I'm going to move. I don't know if I can have it, but it works. You hit it. It's got a counterweight in it. Yeah. Anyway, you know what? I just forget when I don't move it. Stubble also says that he's read a quarter of John Stakely's Armor. Report back. I really like that book. Stubble goes on to say, can you explain to me how they in Picard Episode 2 were able to recreate exact actions that were taken by 2 individuals by analyzing a few remaining molecules in the apartment? How do you extrapolate that exact information by analyzing some residue in the room? Again, Stubble, it's that kind of stupid science fiction magic technology that it's infected Star Trek since over the last decade. I cannot stand it. I wish it didn't happen that way. But that's part of the problem with Star Trek. I don't believe that. I don't believe a device like that exists. That was a stupid police procedural way. Somebody came up with that in the writers' room. Yeah, that's a way around telling our story effectively and creatively. It's so irksome because that technology, it's magic. I don't believe that. You shattered my belief. Thomas Roughly sent in a super chat and says, just thanks for a great conversation. Well, Thomas, I very much appreciate you saying that because, a lot of people slag off on me on Twitter. They think that they don't understand. It's either I don't like Star Trek because they won't hire me. They won't hire me. I've never written for television. Why would anybody hire me to work on a Star Trek TV show? I've worked on 1 TV show. I've worked on Femme Fatales as an editor and a director, and I'm proud of my work. I know Femme Fatales we shot them in 3 days. They were 12 pages a day. It was a tough show, even though it was HBO Cinemax. I had to be approved by HBO as a director, which I was, and I'm proud of all the work I do. I really am. You just have to understand what kind of work it is and take it in the context with which it was delivered. But I thank you for saying that the good conversation. I hope so. I hope we all have good conversations, and I know you guys are always having good conversations in the live chat. So I can just I'll just turn and look. Mark 47 says that apartment scene was right out of Warehouse 13. Yeah. By the way, I had friends that worked on Warehouse 13, and Warehouse 13 had some pretty good writing in it. Just saying. Paul Gilmore says, if you have not seen The Good Liar, it is one of the most underrated films of 2019, a fantastic mystery thriller. It's a shame no one saw it. Well, let me tell you, I did see it, and The Good Liar was directed by Bill Condon, who I'm a big fan of. As a matter of fact, Bill Condon, yes, through the great Jack Morrissey, purchased my other 1-to-1 scale Clockwork Orange rocking machine. I've heard he doesn't have it anymore, but yes, he did purchase it. I thought The Good Liar was great, although I gotta say, well, I can't say it. Yes, let's just leave it there. If you've seen The Good Liar, if anybody wants to talk about it, you can't really talk about what happens in the movie without spoiling it. You shouldn't spoil it if you haven't seen it, because how about that ending? Joseph is here. Joseph, how are you, Joseph? Joseph is a great artist, and I'm getting a picture he drew of me as, I guess, as Picard, but at least in a Next Generation uniform, framed. Joseph says, Picard being 94 in the show doesn't bother me. Humans live longer in the Trek future. That doesn't bother me either. We saw Dr. McCoy in, 130-something, 137? What's wrong with not having died in Encounter Farpoint? So that doesn't bother me. I believe up to 150 years average lifespan. Also, do you believe Vulcans get promotions in Starfleet harder than humans, considering they live much more? I don't know. I mean, I think Vulcans, being one of the founding members of the Federation, they probably, I would like to believe that in the Star Trek future, people are, they, as Kirk said, Spock said, each according to their gifts. That people, it truly is a meritocracy where everybody is allowed to shine. I love that idea. I think that would be great. Paul Gilmore tipped $1 and said, by the way, I watched both seasons of Femme Fatales when it was on, and I enjoyed them. They were campy, fun shows. I agree. I mean, I thought what we did on Femme Fatales they were very budgetarily constrained shows, but I thought they were, Roger Chingarian, who shot our shows, he was an incredible DP. I really like working on them. Everybody gave their all. They were very difficult to make because we didn't have very much time to make them. But I had a lot of fun. I think that ironically, the one thing about the shows that hampered them was the sexual content, because we were required by HBO and Cinemax to provide literally a certain nudity. Like, you had to have a minute and a half of a sex scene here, and you had to have a certain amount of nudity and a certain amount of breasts on screen, literally, and they would count the time. And editing my own episodes was really interesting, because I had to sometimes deal with that. And the first episode of the second season, I directed and edited the second season premiere about these guys, these people in a reality, like a Big Brother house. It was the only time I got notes back from the studio that I had to cut back on the sexuality, which I thought was ironic, but it was really fun to do. It was really fun to do those episodes, and I'm proud of what I did. I thought Help Me Rhonda was really well done, aside from the scene that they added, because they added this pointless scene where a woman's the great Anna Alexander's in a shower, which I thought was silly, but it was fun. I mean, what was really interesting about working on, since you asked, on Femme Fatales, like, I'll give you an example. So the second episode I directed in this first season was called Help Me Rhonda, and it was a prequel to the pilot. And in it, there was this really long chase scene through the woods at night. And I'm like, we can't shoot that. we don't have time. I literally had a half an hour to shoot a whole chase scene in the woods. So what I did was, I told our DP, and he didn't like this at all, but we were already outside shooting a scene over on a rope bridge. Crazy, right? And I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to shoot it in one direction, handheld, and we'll have our antagonist and our protagonist run when we'll get some coverage handheld in one direction. And then we just move forward to a tree line, have them run into the tree line and turn around and come running back at us. And then I can just cut the reverses with whatever coverage is there. And it's handheld anyway, a little shaky cam, and boom. We shot an entire little bit of a chase scene in 30 minutes. That's filmmaking, let me tell you. Anthony Gonzalez says, did you get a chance to talk about Picard with Dan Murrell in New York? It would be interesting to see the two of you talk about the series. If you could get him on the show in any way, go Droogs. Well, Anthony, I would say I'm very happy with the Burning Droogs so far, which you'll see why soon. And although people keep asking me to trade my players, I think what's interesting is look, would I have liked to have it's live, so you know, I didn't beat Guy, but I didn't get destroyed either. But I didn't talk to Dan Murrell, the great. By the way, Dan Murrell, of all the people that I've met in this sort of YouTube pundit space, Dan Murrell is one of the great guys, and his knowledge of Star Trek is immense. I would love to sit down and talk to Dan Murrell. Actually, you know, it's interesting. I should ask him to come on my show. We should do a show where he comes on and we talk about Trek from a philosophical standpoint. Like, what is the state of modern Trek and all that? Because here's the funny thing. Like, I never want the people that like modern Star Trek, I feel that when I'm critical of Star Trek, everybody feels that I'm personally attacking them. And I get frustrated because I'm just trying to convey what I think. And this guy, Trek-splainer, he clearly gets a lot out of Star Trek. And he's looking at things differently than I am. I mean, I, of course, you know, as the viceroy of verisimilitude, I want Star Trek I want to be able to believe. I want, it gives me no pleasure. Hey, don't you dare take that, Gilbert. No, buddy. Here, you know what? You're not barking, but I'm going to give you a cookie anyway. How about that? There you go, buddy. You know, people haven't seen you. If I give you a second cookie, hang on. Since you're being so nice, you want to come up? Up. Where'd you come from? Don't pull out the microphone. Anyway, good boy. But yeah, I think it'd be fun to be on with Dan Murrell. I think that would be, we could definitely talk a lot of Star Trek philosophy that I think would be great. And I think that's a good idea. But I didn't talk to him about Picard. I'm going to soldier on. I'm going to continue on. What a day this has been. Now, look, by the way, all of you, thank you for staying with me. You can't say that Robservations, the show about something, isn't about something, because it is. Now, yeah, Tallulah. Maybe I shouldn't just let him in here. See, the problem is, now that Elizabeth is at school all the time and the girls are gone, I'm the only one here. The dogs, they're doodles, so they follow you. They go everywhere. What I was saying is, and I'll cut this out of the show later, so you won't see it. Let me start again. What I was saying is, and I guess I was telling the whole, you missed the entire story, so I'm going to start again. So, to answer your question, Tommy, about how things are changed, I'm going to use an example from Tango Shalom. In Tango Shalom, in the movie, there's a scene where our protagonist, Moshe Yehuda, Rabbi Moshe Yehuda, is sort of having a dark day of the soul. He's soul-searching, and in the movie, he's in New York City, and he finds his way to a church. And he sees a church from across the street, and in the original script, he has a vision of Quasimodo. That's right, Quasimodo, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And this vision of Quasimodo is what gets him to go into this church to talk to a priest. But there's also a scene outside the church where the priest gives a blanket and a sandwich to a homeless man. And in the movie, I know in real life that a Hasidic man, a Hasidic rabbi, would not go into a Catholic church. But this is a film, and the producers were saying you cannot. They shot this Quasimodo sequence on green screen that was supposed to be comped into where, I don't know, but they shot the sequence, and as we're cutting it together, I said to Gabe, I'm like, Quasimodo is never mentioned ever in this script, other than this scene. Why would a Hasidic rabbi, a learned man, a man who studies, why would a vision of a fictional character scare him, be enough to scare him to go into a church? Why wouldn't a scene of a priest showing doing a mitzvah, showing an act of kindness, be enough in the state of mind that he was in to make Moshe go in and meet with Father Anthony, which is what happens in the final film? But we went back and forth on that, so it was in the script. I don't know why it was in the script, but it was in the script, and during editing, we cut that out. That was a completely superfluous scene. I don't understand why it was in there, but we did change the script. So, Tommy, to answer your question, yes. Scripts are very iterative. Movies are very iterative. When you're in the editorial sequence or editorial part of the project, you do, in fact, get to change things. But still, it is all based on the original story and what the writer did, in fact, come up with. And I think that's, if a story is bad or a screenplay is bad, certainly the director and the producers are at fault somewhat. But, you can blame on a TV show, especially a TV show. A TV show is completely a writer's medium. It is all about the showrunner, it's all about the writing staff, and it's all about the head of that writing staff. And you can place blame. And it's not like Star Trek The Next Generation, which did have, in fact, a core group of writers. If you watch our third season Inside the Writer's Room piece that's hosted by Seth MacFarlane, it was Naren Shankar, it was Ron Moore, it was Brandon Braga, and it was Renee Echeverria. Though that was our core group of writers, but before you got to that core group of writers, you did have outside writers that would contribute. But on a TV show, I always blame the writers. It's always about writing. And the directors are guns for hire that come in, but it's the writing staff that makes a TV show what it is. And if you look at the credits for Star Trek, well, I think one of my problems with Star Trek Picard is, like with Star Trek Discovery, you have so many people giving their voices, and I feel like the show is a little haphazard. I mean, on one hand, you can see Kirsten Beyer adding there's so much lore in Star Trek Picard. It's sequel, whether it's Seven of Nine, because she wrote a lot of Voyager stuff, so I'm sure it was her who suggested we'll bring Seven of Nine in, and probably Hugh. And there's so much Star Trek lore, it could be impenetrable. If you don't know Star Trek, there's a lot going on in Picard that is, what does all this mean? Which I also think was kind of a mistake. On one hand, there's a lot of ties to old Star Trek, which is something that you would think that I, as a fan, would love. And on one hand, that would be true. But there's so much of it. There's so much lore that I think it's gotten in the way of telling. I would love to have seen even a much smaller story that didn't have clandestine Romulans and hit squads and acid tablets. And there's so much stuff going on that I think that the story they want to tell about Picard, I think about one of my favorite movies along these lines is Unforgiven. When Clint Eastwood's William Money, who's way beyond doing any of this, he was a wicked man. He was drunk most of the time. He became a notorious gunfighter. And Unforgiven is the kind of story that I thought Picard was going to be. I knew after listening to Patrick Stewart talk, it would be more along the lines of Logan. But I always blame TV writers for television. I certainly blame the writing staff of Manifest. God love them. I had 2 episodes to catch up with. They don't disappoint. If a show like Manifest would make me angry, which it doesn't, I just have to. Attic Hatch Sound sent in a super chat saying, "Rob, I had to use the bathroom. Can you start the story one more time?" No sound since Tallulah messed with the microphone. I'm glad I saw that. You can't say the dogs are great, aren't they? They're they destroy starships and they just tear stuff out. It's Tallulah's the menace. Tallulah is she's much more of a puppy. Anyway, where was I? See, she's coming back again. Tallulah. What a character that is. Well, since we did get another glimpse of No Time to Die at the Super Bowl, we get to see another flying vehicle that 007 and James. It's interesting. 007 and James Bond are apparently in this flying machine, which is sort of interesting, which I kind of liked. So here's another question from it's a good question. Anthony Matthews writes in, "Hi, Rob. So you mentioned Bond on yesterday's show, and you talked to Campy about it last week. The basic idea was that it would be better if women and people of color were allowed to create their own new and original characters so they can make them into a big deal. I somewhat agree with that. But you also have to remember that for me, while I was growing up, I didn't have the luxury of seeing major characters that looked like me. So either I had to find something to connect to in the white characters or just not partake in certain types of entertainment at all. Therefore, like you, while we grew up on Bond, we've waited our entire lives to see someone that looks like us utter the words Bond, James Bond. So yes, we want new and original characters, but we also want a Bond as well. Thanks. Keep up the good work. Anthony M." Well, Anthony, first of all, thanks for your letter. That's a good letter. Here's the thing. I totally understand what you are saying. That you would love a character. I would assume you're black, I guess, right? And if you are, I totally get the fact that you would want to grow up hearing your hero or a character you love saying Bond, James Bond. But I would then ask you, how would you feel about the fact that James Bond is a literary character based, obviously, on Ian Fleming's works? Now, as somebody who wrote the character a specific way, would you feel that you, as, say, a black man, or if you're an Indian woman, or you're an Asian, a person from all over Asia, would you feel that you were well served if a character that was originated in a specific way was changed to suit you? Now, what I mean by that is, I don't care personally. I grew up watching movies from all over the world. As I've talked about, I really love Tony Leung. I find him, like, if I was an Asian dude, if I was born in Asia, I'd want to look like Tony Leung or Jet Li or Chow Yun-fat, because I think those guys are awesome. You know, especially Tony Leung. He goes from hard boiled to in the mood for love. I mean, he can work for John Woo and then Wong Kar-wai. And I look at those characters and I'm like, man, you know what? I would totally want to look like that dude. Mike Coulter, who played Luke Cage, I think one of the most fantastically beautiful men I've ever watched on TV. And I think to myself, if I was a black dude, I would want to be Mike Coulter. As a matter of fact, as a white dude, I want to be Mike Coulter. So I've always looked at it that way. I don't know what that says about me. Maybe that's a way that my privilege is talking. I don't know. But it just seems to me like I wouldn't want Luke Cage to be white. You know, like Luke Cage, his character to me is he's a black dude. And I love him for that, you know, and I loved Mike Coulter playing Luke Cage. I would have been pissed off if they replaced him, you know. But I guess that's because I grew up watching a different kinds of things. Like, look, there are certain East Indian actors that are in Bollywood cinema that I love. I mean, I'd say like Shah Rukh Khan or something, but I mean anybody, and I like them too. Like I've always liked different ethnicities and people that looked different than me, doing things because it seemed like it was cooler, you know, like it was, but I agree, like, with what you're saying. I understand. I just wonder, I think if you had grown up, if you'd seen other people that looked like you, like I was afforded the privilege of so many, like you grew up with Westerns, and most of the heroes that I saw growing up, Captain Kirk, Han Solo, John Koenig from Space 1999, Ed Straker. Ed Straker wasn't white enough, so they gave him a platinum blonde wig. But so I grew up with all of these heroes of mine being white. Now, I can understand. I totally sympathize with the fact that when you're growing up in a world where most of the heroes on movies and television were white dudes, it would totally get frustrating to not see someone that looked like you as one of your heroes. And I completely get that. But, you know, Um, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about, but it really is how you feel. Because if you wanted to see a black dude call himself Bond, James Bond, and be James Bond, I'm totally sympathetic with that. And if they made a James Bond movie now and James Bond was black, I don't think I'd have a problem with it. But it would depend how they deal with the fact that James Bond is now black. I mean, if they just didn't deal with it, I think that would also be sort of doing a disservice to everybody in a way, because ultimately the James Bond character is Ian Fleming's character, and we could change him to go with the today, but I don't know if that would be serving. I don't know if we want to do that. I don't know if we want to start making wholesale alterations to an author's character. I mean, we can, I guess, but I don't know if that's necessarily the right solution. But it could be. I mean, I don't necessarily object to like gender swapping. I guess Dr. Kynes, for instance, in Dune, is now a woman instead of a man. Max von Sydow played Dr. Kynes in David Lynch's Dune. I don't have a problem with that. You know, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I didn't have a problem, as I've said, with Morgan Freeman being red in Shawshank Redemption. He wasn't written as a black man, but I don't think I didn't have a problem with that. And I've talked on this story, talked on the show a lot about how I used to read that story every year. It never even occurred to me, because as soon as Morgan Freeman, as soon as you hear his voiceover, you know, you're locked in. And I think if you had a James Bond story, like in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, where when you see this fight scene and when you see George Lazenby first introduced, and after the opening pre-title sequence is over, he literally turns to the camera and says, "This never happened to the other fellow." And it works. Maybe you could do that in James Bond. You could have a black James Bond, and you're done. You don't have to say any more. I actually think that wouldn't be necessarily a bad thing, because not only would it end the debate right there, but then it's got precedent in Bond history. I think that would be a cheeky way to do it. As a matter of fact, I kind of like that idea. Maybe they should do that, now that I think about it. But you know, you're right. That's why I really liked, there was a viral video that went out that was, well, I don't know who did. It was like these three black dudes looking at a poster for Black Panther before it had come out, and one of them was filming it, and the others were like, "This is what it's like to be a white dude seeing every other movie poster that's ever come out, when you have this kind of representation all the time." And it was great, and you could see that they were so excited and so happy. And I agree. I'm like, I don't know what it's like. I never lived in a world where my heroes, you know, weren't white, and because I was lucky to be born in the United States as a white dude. But yeah, I mean, I think now isn't it great though that we live in a time where kids get to grow up with Black Panther? Not only with Black Panther, but you get everything else that comes along with it. You get Wakanda, you know, and you get the Dora Milaje, you get Okoye, because, you know, I think every young boy, and even myself, if I was a 10-year-old boy and I had Okoye in my life, that would have been a good thing, because as I've told everyone, my first crush in the world was Nichelle Nichols. And yes, but your point is well taken. I just wonder though if it should be James Bond. You know, maybe not. I know I've said other characters, but I don't know. I mean, again, it all comes down to Ian Fleming and what he would want. I would feel changing his character, but then I guess it really doesn't matter. It would depend. I mean, I hope that whatever they did, if the next James Bond is black, or if he's Pakistani, or if he's from Africa or East Indian or from Asia even, if Henry Golding is the next James Bond, what I hope is that the script is great, the story is great, the villain is great, the music's great, and it's just a beautifully made film that we can all love, and it doesn't besmirch the lasting legacy of Bond. Although I do think, look, I would like to see more original characters. You know, I really would. I'd like to see more original characters more than anything else. I think that's the most important thing. As long as we get new characters, I think getting representation by having new characters is the best thing that we what we can do. I really believe that. Here's an interesting one. Let's see. This is an interesting letter. This letter, Tallulah is back. Is she going to cause me... Really? I should just end this stream. I'm going to give you cookies to shut you up. But you're on my shit list today, Tallulah. This one comes from Fabian Lilo, the Kiwi in Perth. And, hey, Rob, you mentioned in an earlier podcast about how cool it would be if John Delancey could return to play the omnipotent Q in a future episode of Star Trek Picard. When you have a chance, check out what Delancey got involved with lately with Dutch multi-instrumentalist Arjen Anthony Lucassen. Arjen happens to be a big sci-fi fan himself, and throughout his illustrious career released 2 albums under the Star One banner, where each song was inspired by a particular sci-fi movie. Wow, this is cool. I've never heard of this. For example, you will notice a song in the video entitled Songs from the Ocean, a song mainly about Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. Wow. That's amazing. That's all he said. But I'm going to put this link in the by the way, this letter is, in fact, you can't jump on me, Tallulah, like that. No, you can't. Your usefulness to me is at an end today. Here it is. Here's a link to the website. Go check it out. You are being not nice. Gilbert knows I am annoyed. This is what I have to deal with. Normally, you know what? She never makes noise. But she does make noise here. Why? Come here. Why do you have to be this way? Why? So you're a nice dog. You don't have to bark incessantly. Why? Do you have to do that? Yeah, I don't think you do. Huh? I know. She's just loquacious. Aren't you? She's a loquacious dog. Well, you know what, ladies and gentlemen? I think I'm bringing this show to a halt. There's been too many problems already. It's hard doing these shows when I let the dogs in. If I didn't let the dogs in, they would be screaming outside because doodles are pack animals. They like to be around people. They don't like to be alone. And I think I'm going to end this chat today. But I want to thank everybody for being here. I also want to thank my moderators. I want to thank, of course, Mayor Mike Bodden of Riverdale, Iowa. Don't blame him for what happened yesterday. There's also, of course, the great detective Jim Boyers. There is Greg Smith, who is building a 1-to-1 scale land speeder. There's also Louis Yu and Jordy Lyons. They make this show what it is, and so do you, my imagination connoisseurs, and you, members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. I'm sorry the show went a little bit off the rails, but if nothing else, you know that I'm relatively genuine. And, yeah, what a day this has been, huh? Yeah.